Secrets, spies, and espionage. Three words that come to mind when you picture Soviet efforts during the Cold War, before the collapse of the Union in 1991. But what if I told you that large remnants of their undercover activities still exist today? What if I told you that the ex-global superpower had been keeping entire towns and cities secret? Let's explore. During the Cold War, the USSR tried everything it could to prevent people from learning more than they absolutely needed to, using stringent information policies, incarceration threats, and, well, the KGB. One of the most intriguing methods they used to stop the flow of the information involved building entire secret towns, each with its own top-secret function, such as nuclear research or the production of bioweapons. For many years, these hidden towns were kept absolutely secret from the outside world. They weren't on any map, no street signs or directions to take you there. Simply, if you knew, you knew. And if you didn't, well, in the height of the USSR, you should have known better than to stick your nose in anyway. Closed cities were first introduced in Russia during World War II, when the Soviet nuclear program was ramping up. These places used to house sensitive military installations or top-secret research facilities that needed more room or freedom than a typical military post. Families of people engaged in top-secret initiatives, reliable friends who may not have been directly connected to the closed city's mission, as well as those necessary to maintain a population such as medics, cooks, cleaners, shopkeepers, and drivers. With a similar form of secrecy commonly found surrounding U.S. bases, like Area 51. These secret Soviet societies would be home to tens of thousands of permanent residents. These communities are formally referred to as ZATO, a Russian abbreviation for Closed Administrative Territory Entities. These cities were the only ones in the Soviet Union with access to products that were prohibited, such as imported food and even clothing from the outside market, which helped to make life a little easier when you're virtually blocked off from the rest of your country. Many of these ZATOs were found or declassified when the USSR disintegrated and its component countries gained independence. Even though their existence is no longer a secret, some of them, particularly the ones in Russia, continue to serve their original role today. It's also believed that there may be a few more that have yet to be discovered. One city still shrouded in mystery is known as the Graveyard of the Earth. Ozersk, or City 40, is located near Mayak in Chelyabinsk Oblast. Ozersk was created in response to the US dropping atomic bombs on the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in 1945, at the end of World War II. Joseph Stalin, the leader of the Soviet Union, instructed his scientists to create a nuclear arsenal to counter the American threat, after learning about the horrifying new weapon of mass devastation. In order to create the crucial large-scale plutonium supplies for the Soviet atomic weapon, the Mayak plant was established in the heart of the Urals in 1948 and required hundreds of operatives to work in secrecy. To accommodate the workers, Ozersk was first established as kind of a shantytown with wooden huts to house the laborers. However, throughout the years, it expanded to become a modern metropolis with 100,000 residents, many of whom worked at the Mayak facility, with the last population of the secret town recorded as over 82,000 in 2002. Maps did not show Ozersk, and its residents were not counted in the national census. For up to years, residents were even prohibited from speaking with their families and friends. For many years, barbed wire fences, guard posts, and entry restrictions surrounded the city. But creating nuclear warfare weapons comes with a price that the town is still paying. On the afternoon of September 29, 1957, residents of the southern Ural city of Chelyabinsk looked into the sky to see bluish-violet hues covering the clouds. The local media made assumptions about polar lights appearing unusually south. However, a flurry of government activity around the military region that contained the nuclear station, Mayak, quickly became apparent after a few days. Peasants had to kill their animals, bury their crops, and plow their fields. Over 20 communities totaling over 11,000 residents, underwent complete demolition and evacuation. No formal comment was made regarding any of these orders, but it was clear to all that Mayak had experienced a significant emergency. A radioactive waste cistern's cooling system had broken down. Nobody noticed until it was too late. Once the garbage began to heat up and reach a temperature of 350 degrees, it blew apart. 20 million curies of radioactive material were launched into the air by the 160-ton concrete cover explosion, where they were dispersed by the wind. With 270,000 inhabitants, it was established over an area of 20,000 square kilometers. There was a release of 70 to 80 tons of garbage into the neighborhood. A radioactive gas cloud with a height of 1 kilometer, containing 10% of this, impacted 217 localities, with a combined population of 270,000 people. The radiation exposure in the 3 surrounding communities with the highest contamination was between 150 and 300 rads. These communities, with populations ranging from 1,054 to 1,908, weren't even evacuated until 7 to 10 days after the catastrophe. Because they weren't informed of the incident, many locals were ill as a result. In an effort to stop future contamination after the evacuation, homes were destroyed, cattle were murdered, and crops were buried. These crops and animals were the only sources of income for the residents of these settlements. It was impossible to stop the disaster's details from leaking out, at least locally. However, it wasn't until 1976 that Soviet immigrant Georges Medvedev first made some information about the disaster public. The CIA had been aware of it for a very long time. By 1960, its network of informants and aerial spy photographs had given them a good understanding of what had taken place. Later, the documents were made public, although they had previously been kept secret, in order to protect the reputation of the developing nuclear business and prevent concerns about the safety at the Hanford nuclear facility of the U.S. government. Government laboratories also released remarks that downplayed Medvedev's claims regarding the gravity of what would come to be known as the Kishtim disaster. Now, the town of Ozersk is no longer a secret. Residents are free to leave, but those that choose to stay, even with the amount of radiation still plaguing the area, suffer the consequences over 70 years later. Instead of continuing its primary aim of producing plutonium, the walled town now focuses on recycling spent fuel and retired nuclear weapons. Approximately 80,000 people call it home, though recent years have seen a decline in that number. And even without the concrete blocks stated before, the contaminated Lake Karachay is still one of the most hazardous locations on the planet. Children are born with cancer, the life expectancy is low, and the pine trees which once covered the landscape no longer exist. But at least they are free to leave. Following the fall of the Soviet Union, numerous abandoned cities were made public. With a combined population of roughly 1.5 million, there are still 44 publicly acknowledged closed cities in Russia, and an additional 15 or so closed cities are reportedly present, but their names and locations haven't been made public by the Russian government. Even though the number of closed cities has greatly decreased since the 1990s, Norilsk, Talnak, Karakin, Dudinka, and Igarka in the north still had stringent restrictions on international travel in 2001. So, what about the secret Soviet society still in existence that we don't know about? In Tomsk Oblast, there is a closed city called Syrisk. It was founded in 1949 and referred to as the Fifth Postal. Many of these closed cities were often identified and titled by their postal codes. It was built to house the nuclear weapons production facility for the Siberian Chemical Combine, with the production of highly enriched uranium as its primary purpose. Unlike Ozersk, Syrisk still owns and operates nuclear facilities throughout the town, with a population of over 100,000. Like in most closed towns, entry requires a special permit. Nevertheless, visitors aren't permitted to roam the city at will. All that we know is that the settlement exists. What goes on behind closed doors or walls is still kept under wraps. What do you think? Did the USSR manage to successfully create nuclear weapons during the height of their union? Was that the true purpose of these hidden towns? Or is something else going on? What are they hiding?